Hello everyone, in this video I'd like to talk about something called selective breeding. Now this topic's fairly straightforward. It actually comes up in Key Stage 3, usually in sort of topics about inheritance, but also in Key Stage 4 as a sort of precursor leading into the more heavy genetic topics like genetic engineering. But it is really simple. So let's talk through selective breeding, what it is and how it works, what it's used for, and really the pros and the cons of this method. Selective breeding ultimately is a way that we can artificially select plants or animals that we want to breed. That's pretty much it. We are selecting plants or animals that we want to breed, and we do that because we want particular genes to remain in the population. So we're selectively breeding, or we're choosing to breed those organisms that have particular features that we want. Now, I've put a picture of a cow at the bottom because in school, the classic example is an agricultural one. We talk about farming, we talk about improving meat yields. But generally, if we just think sort of across the board, there are a number of reasons why you'd want to selectively breed. One of them would be maybe to increase the yield of meat, milk or grain, for example. So we'll put that one in there. Maximise yield. Another reason why you might want to selectively breed is for good health and disease resistance. So if you have organisms that you know are in good health, you may very well choose to breed those in the hope that the offspring that they produce would be healthy. And then there are other particular qualities, like for example, more so with animals, if you're looking at temperament or speed or even just attractiveness. So we'll just put two of those. So you might be breeding for temperament or speed, for example. Now this is your basic process. So from your existing stock, if you like, you select the ones that have the characteristics that you deem favourable. You simply breed them together, you breed them with each other. You then select the best of the offspring that they produce, and then you breed them together. And if you do that over several generations, then in theory those desirable traits get stronger and stronger. Now what I've discussed so far are reasons why you'd want to selectively breed, and we've just said the basic process involved. But selective breeding comes with many drawbacks. The big one is a reduction in the gene pool. So what we're going to do is just, in black at the top I've written essentially the pros. In red I'm going to write the cons. So we get a decline, a reduction in what's called the gene pool. Now the gene pool is sort of a term we use to represent the number of all the different alleles in a population. And in a previous video I've said alleles are just alternate versions of genes. So we're reducing that variety of genes that we have. And that's because essentially we keep breeding just the best animals which happen to be closely related. So we inbreed, we keep it within the same family. So there's far less variety out there. Now because we've reduced the gene pool, that leads to another number of consequences. Number 2, health problems. And this is a major concern, because there's a greater risk of harmful genetic disorders occurring when we limit the gene pool. These are harmful recessive disorders, and again in another video I've explained the difference between dominant and recessive genes. So we're getting the build-up of harmful recessive characteristics in a population. The third problem with selective breeding comes from the fact that because there isn't much variation and the stock are closely related to one another, if a new disease appears that seriously affects one, it most likely is going to affect them all. Because others will succumb to it because there is that little variation between them. If one is susceptible, then in theory all the others could be. So a third problem is the sort of inability, if you like, to perhaps resist certain diseases if a new disease appears. So the inability to perhaps resist disease if you've lost that genetic variation. There is another one as well, and that just generally is the fact that there is no guarantee. I mean, with this whole selective breeding process, there is no guarantee that the offspring that you produce will have those desired traits. It's different to genetic engineering. That genetic engineering, we're actually manipulating the genetic material. We're almost incorporating the genetic material from one organism into another. So we are tailoring it to have particular characteristics. With selective breeding, to a degree, we're kind of just hoping that those characteristics are shown in the offspring. Now, just to finish, what I'd like to do is just explain how selective breeding works in plants. Because we can think about maximising the yield, for example, on a milk or meat sort of farm. And the cows and bulls are often examples that we use when referring to selective breeding. But students often forget that we can selectively breed plants very, very easily, even in a classroom setting. So we'll just shrink this down just a little. In a classroom, to selectively breed plants, all you would essentially need to do is take, and this is a very crude drawing, take a plant, take a paintbrush, and onto that paintbrush, what we want to try and do is pick up some pollen. All you then have to do is take that pollen, paintbrush, and transfer it to any other plant you wish. And that's it. You are selectively choosing which two plants to breed. You're not relying on a random pollinator. So you take that pollen on the paintbrush and you apply it to the stigma of another plant, and you get the formation of what's called the pollen tube. The pollen will pass down, ultimately reaching the ovule, fertilising the egg. So in this, you have selectively bred in the classroom yourself which flowers you want to mate. So you can see it's very, very straightforward. It's a very simple thing to do. Questions on selective breeding tend to be more the sort of pros and the cons aspect. So like we have at the top, we can maximise our yield. We can do it to maybe encourage good health or disease resistance in the offspring, or to improve specific traits like temperament or speed. But with selectively breeding organisms and inbreeding, we are reducing the gene pool, encouraging harmful recessive characteristics to appear in the population, so encouraging health problems, and making a few organisms, if not all, more susceptible to a disease because they've lost that genetic variability. So this is just a little bit about selective breeding. Okay, I hope that helps.